spokesperson, Pete Wishart.
Thank you ever so much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's great to follow the Leader of the House. I don't get this opportunity to follow him and debate in this House. It's good to see him in his place and in such fine fettle and in a reasonably good mood after the difficult time and torrid time he had in the dispatch box yesterday. It's good to see him back here today and taking his responsibilities as Leader of the House and coming here and fronting up this debate, this very, very important debate that we are holding today. Because today is actually quite an auspicious day. Today we mark 2 weeks, the 2-week anniversary of this new age of Tory sleaze, the not-so-glorious era of Tory chaos on standards and behaviour, a period in our political history that will now never be forgotten. And like all great historical epochs, it has its heroes and villains and the people who have defined it. Most notably amongst them, of course, is the Leader of the House himself. Then we have the Government Chief Whip, all masterminded, organised and administered by the Chief of Staff of this organisation, the Prime Minister himself. This is the troika of standards misery, the holy trinity of standing up for your pal when the going gets tough. Then there's the winners. We know who the winners are. It's quite a lot of them. They've made an absolute fortune out of these second jobs, and still good on them. You know, they're the winners. Then there's the losers and the victims, and I'm trying to think generally about who these people might be. The victims, I think, are those who believe in propriety, those who want our politics beyond reproach. But surprisingly, amongst the victims in all this, I look to the Tory backbenches who have been dragged up that hill by the dysfunctional grand old Duke of York to be marched all the way down again. And then when they thought they'd got to the bottom, they were dragged further into the ground by their Prime Minister. They have every right to be upset with their hard Brexiteer colleagues who are running this government. I'm sure they never signed up to be part of a House which is so singularly loathed by the people that they represent. And day after day, the headlines keep on coming. Yesterday's was quite amusing. It all involved the Community Secretary, where he seemed to be levelling up on his obligations to his good friend and leadership donor, David Mellor, who he put in the VIP lane for £160 million of PPE contracts. But today we're on second jobs. The attention and focus is turned to this whole idea and concept of second jobs. And in traditional, good-natured way, they seem to want to make an absolute and utter hash out of this. Now, I think we have a good idea of what the public want when it comes to MPs' second jobs. What the public want is to be absolutely satisfied that no Member of Parliament is profiteering from their position as an MP. They want to know that their MP is dedicated exclusively to them and is working full-time in their interests, and that they are their only concern. They most definitely don't want to see Members of Parliament earning these eye-watering, obscene figures that we've seen some of them earning in the cause of these second jobs. They actually believe that we are handsomely paid. We're probably, to most members of the public, paid far too much for what they do. And if I'm sure if we were to ask them, they would be all in favour of making sure that we had our salaries reduced. And we certainly don't believe that we need another second job to supplement what are above generous salaries that we receive for doing our important work. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. I thank the honourable member for giving way, because he is making a very powerful point. And on that point about second salaries at the moment, at a time when we see record inflation today, that we have a cost of living crisis, energy bills, does he agree with me that the fact that we are arguing over the fine print of whether or not MPs can earn more money does us no credit whatsoever, and that cross-party consensus would be best served by backing the opposition motion?
I wholeheartedly agree with the Honourable Lady. She'll not be surprised to find me saying to her, we have got this cost of living crisis. Inflation is going through the roof today, and we are here debating our income, and we are going over these issues about whether it's right and appropriate for people to be earning even more than the very generous salaries that we already secure on behalf of looking after our constituents. Of course I do.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and as a breast cancer surgeon, people will know that I have practiced in the past while trying to maintain my licence. I remember being pilloried on the front of the Daily Mail for helping out over Christmas when my colleague had a heart attack. So, to me, I have no issue with second jobs being regulated, whether it's by time or money or whatever way the House would choose. But is this not being used as a smokescreen? Because the issue that was raised at the beginning of this month wasn't about a second job. It was about corruption, selling influence, selling contracts and selling peerages. And second jobs is being used as a cover for that.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with my honourable friend. She gets right to the heart of this. This is nothing other smokescreen from this government to throw this out here to try and excuse their appalling behaviour of the past couple of weeks. And I want to pay tribute to her because she was right. She is a distinguished breast surgeon, and the way that she was traduced with the assistance of the Conservative Party for doing her job, for helping out, for doing this work for nothing was absolutely and utterly appalling. And they should be ashamed of themselves what they did. Yes, Lord.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. We're on to the topic of corruption, and the Leader of the House mentioned earlier, Edwin Burke. Would my friend not agree that there's also another quote from Edmund Burke that we might reflect upon, and that is, of course, the greater the power, the more dangerous the abuse.
And I'll leave it with him, Madam Deputy Speaker, because that is a fantastic quote, and I'm glad that he was able to present that to the House. So, today we have a Labour motion and we have a government amendment. We have no problem in supporting the Labour motion. We will vote with them today if we get the opportunity in this House. We are happy to leave it to the Committee Standards and Public Life, and we applaud them for the work that they've already put into this, and we look forward that we, as a House, should have that decision as soon as possible to back them in their very, very important work. Then we come to the government amendment, and I think my friend from North Ayrshire got it absolutely right. This is nothing than a fig leaf, a cover-up to try and divert, to get away from the real issues about the Prime Minister's private flat, about his villa and wherever it is in Spain, about the propriety of so many members of Parliament across there. I didn't even understand most of what the Leader of the House was trying to explain today. It was, I think, if he left it just as they would do, as the Committee of Standards and Public Life suggests, that would be absolutely fine. But it seemed like they want to direct the Committee of Standards and Public Life. They want to lead them into certain directions, and they want to suggest to them what they should do as part of their work. And I think the chair of the Committee of Standards was absolutely right. That should be left to them to determine, to decide. They don't need the government's prompting in order to get these issues resolved. So let's leave it with them. It is a cross-party committee, and it's a committee that is well chaired from the honourable gentleman, who is very studious and diligent about his work. We've also had today, and this I think gets to the heart of it, we had the hapless International Trade Secretary sent out as one always has. Somebody gets a short straw every morning just now. Today it was the International Trade Secretary, and she couldn't even actually make up her mind how many hours they should all get to work on their second jobs. I think it was initially 10 to 15 hours, and then she suggested, I think it was the Radio 4 interview, that this was up to 20 hours. They can't even decide amongst themselves how many hours they should be able to get in order to do their second jobs. And let's remind ourselves, oh yes, I usually eat Tory backbenchers for breakfast, but I'll give way to the honourable gentleman just now.
Very grateful. As he knows, I'm a member of the Standards Committee, and I just want to clarify something that he mentioned earlier. He's talking about the Committee for Standards in Public Life. It's a different committee to the Committee on Standards in this House, and I think he was confusing the two. He was. I just think it's important. The Committee on Standards in Public Life is an independent committee not associated with this House.
I'm fully aware of what the two different and distinct committees are. But what we want to do is ensure that the Committee of Standards of Public Life, the recommendations, we get an opportunity to back there and what they're saying today, and that's what we're looking forward to doing. But just briefly, Madam Deputy Speaker, to remind ourselves of the scale of this problem and issue when it comes to second jobs. The Sunday Times showed us that 138 MPs have had second jobs in the past year, and 12 earn at least an extra £100,000 a year from outside interest. Almost 1 in 4 Tory MPs spend at least 100 hours a year on second jobs, and 25 MPs spend more than 460 hours a year. Madam Deputy Speaker, we in the Scottish National Party believe that our job as a Member of Parliament must be an exclusive commitment to our constituents. But we also want to see all of Parliament included, and that includes that rotten, corrupt circus down that corridor there. The House of Lords has to be included in this, and I welcome the valiant efforts of my honourable friend, the member for Neilligan and Yard, to try and get this re-looked at again, and the amendment he had to do obviously couldn't be selected, and all my other colleagues who have been looking at this and trying to press this issue. It cannot and never be right that you could be rewarded for a place in the House of Lords for giving £3 million to the coffers of the Tory party. It's a measure that would make a tin pot dictator in a banana republic blush on the size of the amount of pleasing scandal that is. I'll give way to one of my friends.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I wonder if he agrees with me with the government backpedalling on the previous notion of a new committee, that with the present committee in relation to the upper chamber, we need to make sure that that cross-party support also goes to the upper chamber, where we stop appointing members from the opposition to an unelected, unaccountable members of the House of Lords.
Absolutely. We have a duty and obligation and responsibility to make sure that we have the best possible standards in the unelected chamber. It is the Prime Minister that appoints members to the House of Lords, and it's lists that's drawn up by party leaders that gives these appointments an opportunity to be placed there, and it has to stop. And the whole place up there, I mean, I know this House likes it for some reason, watching people dressed up like Santa Claus prance around the place, like put there because they're donors, cronies or placemen. It is an appalling abuse, a corrupt House, and we should be looking at abolishing it, not putting more people in because it happened to give the Tory party £3 million. Yes, I'll give way.
Thank the honourable friend for giving way and congratulate him on a stunning speech, as ever, on this issue. And does he agree with me that it is long past time since we should be banning the practice of members who've been rejected at the ballot box paying their way into an upper chamber? And does he agree with me that in an independent Scotland there will be no unelected upper chamber and all of the members of our legislature will be democratically elected?
Absolutely and utterly. There is no place in any democratic system for people who are placed by a Prime Minister just because they happen to give his party £3 million. It is something that we would never accept in independent Scotland. That brings me to my next point. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that, because the people of Scotland are observing this. They are not liking what they're seeing. It's just making them more determined that we get away from the sleazy, corrupt, rotten cesspit of a place, and that we start to be self-governing in our own nation of Scotland. They are embarrassed by this place, and unfortunately Scotland has not been left unscathed by the behaviour of members of Parliament.
Place is a cesspit. If he really believes that, just leave. Leave with your members. No, seriously, leave. Give up your jobs and go. To call this place a cesspit that does so much good on both benches, on your benches, is appalling. It's an appalling thing to do.
I'm really pleased that I gave way to the honourable gentleman, because he could help us, assist us doing that. He could get rid of... I know we're an irritant to him. I know he can't stand us, and we're the Scottish National Party. We speak up for our nation the way they do. There's an easy, elegant, neat solution. You govern yourselves, and we'll govern ourselves. That's how we could fix it. Sorry, madam, not you, because I know that you govern yourself very effectively, but they can govern themselves in all their corrupt, sleazy beauty, while we could get on with running a proper, democratic, accountable Scottish Parliament in an independent Scotland. That is the answer to the honourable gentleman up there. But I've given way to honourable. You have to get on, because I know that the speakers... Yes. Well, so what we have, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a real issue with the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Because he is the very definition of a second job, being both a member of this House and a member of the Scottish Parliament. But he's also got the added complication that he's a part-time assistant referee into the process. And his difficulties are only being compounded, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, because he didn't properly declare the considerable sum...
Order. I do hope the honourable gentleman has given notice that he intends to talk about another member in his speech.
I most definitely did do that, and I can assure you I would never mention the honourable member without giving them notice in advance that I intended to raise the issue today. So it's a very different of a second job, and it's simply impossible for him to give his full attention to his constituents as their MP, as the Prime Minister now demands from Conservative MPs, when he needs to be in the Scottish Parliament as the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. For example, and it's just one example, Madam Deputy Speaker, the good people in Murray last night weren't represented in the Finance Committee, the Finance Bill vote. The Member of Parliament simply wasn't here. He had to be someplace else, quite legitimately, on another job. He has to decide, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the strictures of the Prime Minister himself who said this. He has to decide whether he can be a full-time Member of Parliament, represent his constituents full-time in this House, or leader of the Scottish Conservatives in the Scottish Parliament. He cannot do both. And I say this, and he's not here because I know he's probably in the Scottish Parliament. He might not be, but he's got First Minister's questions tomorrow where he'll have to be there in the Scottish Parliament. I say to him very candidly that he should decide which Parliament he wants to be part of, because it is quite clear he can't do both. And I think his Prime Minister recognises he can't do both. Yes, I would.
Can I thank my honourable friend for giving way? This is in the public domain, Madam Deputy Speaker, but looking at the register of interests from the Leader of the House, in 2016 he has an entry for January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. How much he earned doesn't matter, but he claims he worked 35 hours in each of those months. Does my honourable friend believe it's possible to be a full-time MP and also find an extra week's worth of work time every month for a second job?
And I know my honourable friend from Dundee East, who's been a colleague of mine for 15 years in this House, the hours that he puts in making sure the good people of Dundee are represented in this place. And he would never be able to find these hours, so I don't know how the Leader of the House is quite able to do this. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, we also have to turn just ever so briefly to something else that's going on in Scottish politics, which deeply, deeply concerns me, and that is dark money and the use of unincorporated associations giving money directly to the coffers of the Scottish Conservatives. Now, we don't know much about these unincorporated associations. We don't. Sometimes we're given an address, sometimes we're given an email, a telephone number, sometimes we're even given a building, but we have absolutely no idea where their income comes from and how they're able to funnel it into the coffers of the Scottish Conservatives. It is a disgrace that they are able to continue with this, and we must get on with it. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've spoken in every debate, I think, on second job and standards in this House in my 20 years in this place. And most recently, we looked at this, and you'll remember this, Madam Deputy Speaker, in February 2015, when a scandal involving a sting operation involving Jack Straw and Malcolm Rifkin took place. We all got together like this, and we all spoke ever so highly detailed about what we should do and how we should address this. And we actually declared that we would do something about it. Isn't it sad that we're back 7 years later, saying the same things, determined to try and clean this place up? We shouldn't have to be here again. We should have had this dealt with. We are going through a terrible, terrible period in our politics just now. It's down to them. The resolution lies with them. Back the Labour motion and throw out this stupid amendment.